General Esteban Huerta, Flamenco Signal, buenos días.
It's early morning under the Flamenco signal station. The crew of Footloose prepares to transit the Panama Canal. Michael took the dinghy to shore to pick up our two hired line handlers, and the canal advisor, Javier, joined us at 6 a.m., arriving on a huge canal pilot boat. We enter the traffic lane before sunup, with channel markers gleaming their red and green lights. As we leave the Playita anchorage, we see the lights of many cargo ships in the main anchorage, waiting for their transit. A few days before, Michael went to pick up the large fenders and 120-foot-long dock lines. With these on board, we were ready to go.
Let's load them in the front.
Okay, honey. Looking good. Now, in the early dawn, Lou and the rest of the crew organize the lines so that they will be tangle-free, out of the way, and ready for their first use. After leaving the anchorage, we will motor down the Balboa Reach, about 7 miles, to approach the first of 3 locks at Miraflores. Here we see the Panama City skyline and the multicolored Museum of Biodiversity. Next, we pass under the Bridge of the Americas. This bridge has a central clearance of 201 feet, too low for some large cruise ships to pass under. A tall ship is another highlight of our passage to the locks. After Miraflores, we will enter the Miraflores Lake, then a short trip across the lake to the locks at San Miguel. This will leave us at 85 feet above sea level in an area known as the Cut. After an hour or so, we are approaching the first locks, and Javier is explaining the currents to us as we approach.
South nose. That's the riskiest part for them. Once they pass, maybe 90% of the job is already done if they have the shit under control.
It's soft, but not that soft.
It's not that soft, yeah. I don't know why they call it soft nose, but it's not.
They
that
got
soft.
a few pieces of rubber on the end.
Yeah, but I'm sure if you hit it, it's not that soft.
Well, we did make it past the soft nose in one piece. We are hand-lined, center chamber behind a huge freighter, Tianjin. It takes less than 10 minutes to rise about 20 feet and uses about 26 million gallons of water. On either side of Tianjin, you can see 2 locomotives called mules. Originally, they were built by General Electric, but are now built by Mitsubishi. The all-electric mules weigh 50 tons each and operate with 2 290-horsepower traction units. The mules position the ship, keeping it in the center of the channel. The canal pilot on the ship's bridge instructs the mules in how to correct the ship's position by tensioning or slacking steel cables that are attached to the ship. Contrary to what you might think, the mules do not pull the ship through the canal. Instead, each ship uses its own engines to move through the lock. Here you can see the ship's propeller being engaged to move the ship ahead in the canal. This creates quite a bit of turbulence, but Footloose is still tied to the walls of the locks and is quite safe. The line handlers on the lock walls throw a monkey's fist to the boat. This is a weight on a thin line. The weight is wrapped in a special knot made from the light line, hence the name, monkey's fist. When the boat moves forward to the next lock, the heavy lines are put back on the transiting boat, and the line handlers on the wall walk the boat forward to the next chamber, holding only the light line of the monkey's fist. Here, the giant locks close behind Footloose. Water begins to rush in through giant culverts in the bottom of the chamber. As the boat rises in the lock, we see workers crossing the closed gates for a shift change. The Panama Canal employs over 10,000 workers, making it one of the biggest employers and revenue sources in Panama. A canal job is a good job here. We cleared the Miraflores locks and began to cross Lago Miraflores. In contemplating our canal crossing, one of the more intimidating ideas was having to feed our Panamanian crew. Apparently, the advisor can order a canal boat to bring him a suitable lunch if the fare on the yacht is not adequate. Slightly humiliating and costly, about $185. Indeed, we put some thought into the menu. As we started our journey, I served homemade muffins and coffee. Later, as we crossed the lake above Miraflores, we had leftover muffins and a fruit salad that Celia and I had prepared the day before. After transiting the locks at San Miguel, we passed under the Centenario Bridge. In the cut, we enjoyed scrambled egg wraps, a la art, with more coffee. This next area, called the Culebra Cut, was one of the most challenging for the canal construction. The first landmark is Gold Hill, where numerous landslides kept the dredges busy. The cut is 7.5 miles long and required the removal of 200 million cubic yards of material. The American effort removed about 180 million cubic yards, with the ill-fated French effort another 20 million. The Americans benefited from the use of more powerful steam engines in excavators and locomotives. At one time, there was one train arriving or departing from the cut every minute to remove the excavated material. 60 million pounds of dynamite was used during the excavation. One of the biggest problems was the instability of the earth at the cut. This caused huge landslides, the largest of which occurred at Cucaracha, moving 500,000 cubic yards of earth. After the cut, we passed Gamboa, where the canal maintenance operations are centered. A huge crane named Titan was captured from the Germans during World War II. It was transported to Long Beach, California, where it was nicknamed Herman the German. Later, it was installed on the USS Kearsarge, a retired battleship. In 1957, it was thought to be the largest floating crane in the world. Today, this crane, called Titan, serves the Panama Canal, lifting the enormous lock gates for maintenance. It takes about 4 hours to transit Gatun Lake. We are passed by huge freighters. It is a very busy place for the world's ships. 200 yards from one of the world's busiest shipping lanes, a man in a cayuco carved from a single tree, fishing as though the outside world did not exist. As we approached the Gatun Lake, I served sancocho, a Panamanian chicken soup with potatoes and yucca and rice. The lunch is well received by Panamanian and American line handlers alike. I am relieved that the culinary portion of our adventure has been a success. We continued along Gatun, amazed at the ships on the lake. Here, a Neo-Panamax vessel, designed for the new locks, passes us on its way to the Pacific. These new container ships can pay over $1 million for each trip through the canal. Tianjin arrived at the locks ahead of us, so we waited our turn to lock ahead of a huge car carrier, Genuine Ace. Waiting meant being tied to the lock wall while Tianjin locked down, the chamber refilled, and the car carrier caught up. After waiting for 20 minutes, we entered the lock and motored close to the final gate.
I'm in neutral.
Once again securely tied to the lock walls, we watch closely as Genuine Ace closes in on our stern. Secured in the final lock, we are lowered to the level of the Atlantic. The gates, built around 1910, have riveted construction that remind us of the earliest steel ships. In fact, the gates float like a battleship, riding on a large steel ball at their hinge. These gates are irreplaceable, since the alloys used in their construction are no longer available, and the formulas are lost to time. Javier warns us that there can be significant turbulence as the fresh water from Lake Gatun mixes with the salty Atlantic. Free at last, we motor towards the Atlantic Bridge, a road bridge connecting Shelter Bay and the city of Cologne. Just before our arrival at Shelter Bay, Javier prepares to leave us. After Javier leaves us, we will weave our way through an anchorage of ships waiting for their transit to the Pacific.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Javier.
Come back tomorrow! Finally, coming to rest at Shelter Bay Marina.